Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here with some more Warhammer combat cards. In this video we're going to be taking a look at another trait, this time Fear. Now Fear is a powerful ability. Many players actually I think consider Fear to be one of the strongest traits in the game. And there's been a lot of heated discussion I've seen about it. Some players think that it's just too strong and needs to be nerfed. Others think that there are plenty of countermeasures to it. But Fear is no doubt very strong. It reduces the incoming damage from the opposite lane, so it's actually also very good at reducing the damage from other traits that deal damage. For example, Precision Shot, Furious Charge, and the area of effect traits like Barrage, Psionic Blast, Death Blow. All of those get their damage reduced, which is why you want to deploy cards with Fear across from those whenever possible. But for me personally, I don't really like using a lot of the bodyguards with Fear, and I will tell you why. But here they are. We're going to be looking at them again from low cost to high cost, but we'll start with the Warlords up at the top. There are 5 Warlords with Fear, and it basically just increases the amount of health that they have, making them harder to kill as long as it's just the unit from the opposite lane attacking them. One thing that actually is good at countering these guys is destroying one of the final bodyguards so that there's an open lane and you can attack from a different lane. The Fear won't do anything to protect the Warlord in that situation. But in most situations it does just make them a lot tougher. And some of them have special rules that also further decrease the incoming damage, like Golagorthrox with Nurgle's Rot. A couple stacks of this combined with Fear can reduce incoming damage to almost nothing. The Psychomancer can also greatly reduce that incoming damage. Morvenn Vahl also with the Holy Aegis, that also combos with the Fear to make her very tough. Boss Nikrot has only one attack type, but he does have a pretty good amount of health, so he is pretty tough. And then the Flying Hive Tyrant is the most expensive one. It also has 3 attack types, so it is pretty powerful Warlord once it's on the field. But again, that high cost means that you will have fewer bodyguards to protect it in the endgame. So yeah, that's it for the Warlords. Now moving on to the bodyguards. Some factions have a lot more units with Fear than others. I think Chaos, Space Marines, and Servants of the Emperor are the 3 factions with the most, with I think Eldari coming in 4th. And then Orcs and Tyranids actually, I believe, only have 1 bodyguard apiece with Fear. And then, of course, Tau do not have anything with Fear. So, again, we'll be starting at the top with the cheapest bodyguards and moving down the line toward the more expensive ones. Now, the way Fear works, let's just take a look at how it reads here. At Fear level 1, it reduces the incoming attack damage by 30%, and increases by 10% with each increasing tier of the trait. So it goes up to 50% at 3, and then the max level Fear is minus 60%, which is pretty ridiculous. So it gets quite a bit stronger with the increasing levels. And also, because it is percentage based, it works the best on cards with a high health pool. So these cheap cards that have a pretty low health are not really going to be able to make the best use of Fear. So I don't really like using these cheaper ones very much. You know, you got the Gene Stealer here, Howling Banshee. We've got the Necron Outcast. These guys, I mean, they don't really have a lot of health, so the Fear might help keep them. It might keep them alive for another, maybe 1 or 2 turns max in most situations. And a lot of these guys actually have a pretty weak attack as well. And I think that's part of the reason why I just don't really like using them. A lot of cards with Fear actually prefer the melee attack, is another thing. You don't see too many really strong ranged units, and certainly not very many Psykers with Fear as well. So that also will, determine what kind of Warlord you want to use with these guys. But again, there are a few exceptions. So moving on down the line, we're getting to slightly more expensive ones. I do see a lot of people using the Reavers. So we've got this guy who has a pretty balanced ranged and melee attack. It's one of the earlier cards that you unlock for Space Marines, so yeah. See a lot of people using him. There's the Reaver Lieutenant as well, but again, these guys don't have a huge amount of health. Not the best damage output. This is a newer card for Servants of the Emperor, one of Gaunt's ghosts. So a lot of people probably won't actually have him. Now there are certain warlords that are able to increase the health of your bodyguards. That is one important thing to note. Take Rakarth, for example, for the Eldari. He can greatly increase the health of his bodyguards by the end of the game. So this thing initially doesn't have very much health, but combined with Rakarth, it can be quite a bit stronger. Same goes with, for Servants of the Emperor, you've got Magos Dominus and also Greyfax. Can be quite good. So we've got Sly Marbo. Sly Marbo used to be, I mean, he unlocks pretty early, I think, if they haven't changed it. So I remember this guy being really strong back in the early days when I played the game. But at the higher levels, he doesn't really have very good damage output, so I don't use him anymore. This is a newer one, the Calexis Assassin. It's a unique one because it is one of the, it's actually the only dedicated Psyker with Fear. So it's an interesting card, pretty fun one, does have pretty good damage output. Its health pool is pretty low though. You can combine it with, say, a Greyfax though to increase its damage and health. Gubbins, this is the big mech with the shock attack gun. For the orcs, he's the only orc bodyguard with Fear currently, I believe. And he used to actually have precision shot. It was just recently changed to Fear. So he's an interesting option. He does have pretty strong stats, lots of damage, so solid card there. That can go with the ranged deck. Alright, moving on down here, we're starting to see a lot of melee units. So for Chaos in particular have a lot of strong melee cards with Fear. We've got the Master of Executions. This is another newer card, so it's at a pretty low level. It doesn't really have enough health to be that good. For me personally, and that's another thing to take into account. How effective a card is largely based on its level. So I can really only go off of my own collection, but that my experience may be a lot different from other players. I've got two Space Marines here. The Interrogator Chaplain. Chaplains tend to have Fear, so melee only, no other attack type on that guy. Brother Adremo as well. Very similar. They're actually almost the same cost, but if you compare their health, the Interrogator Chaplain is actually quite a bit worse than this guy, Brother Adremo, who at the same level will have, looks like 185 health versus 148. So yeah, almost 40 more health. So at the same level, this guy is definitely better. He did start off as a limited edition card, so that's why he's at the lower level for me. Now we got the Terminator Chaplain. This guy used to have Shield, and then they changed his trait to Fear. Another card similar to Sly Marbo. He has a pretty balanced ranged and melee attack, so he doesn't really combo well with Tolmaron or or melee warlords, but he does. He could be pretty good with, say, Captain Acheron, I think. And we're starting to get to the really big ones. For the Eldari, Jane Czar is quite good. For the Eldari, actually, the Solitaire used to have Fear, and then they gave it Deathblow, and Jane Czar instead got the Fear. So she, I think, combos really well with Rakarth if you're going with a melee Rakarth build, again because of the increasing health. She does have very good damage output, and a solid amount of health as well for Eldari card, so yeah, pretty good card there. And then we got this guy, Harkin World Claimer, another, he used to be limited edition, I think he's in the general pool now. He also is at a low level for me, so I personally haven't used him much, but you can see as he levels up he gets quite a bit stronger. He is exactly 40 points, which makes him a target for big game hunter, but again the damage mitigation from Fear actually kind of counteracts big game hunter. Anyway, so yeah, he's pretty strong at the higher levels. Alright, this guy, he used to have Shield actually, and they changed him to Fear. So one thing about some of these Nurgle demons, they have like a weaker psychic attack and a stronger melee attack. And that particular combination is not very good, in my opinion, because the only time that you're going to be using that psychic attack is probably if the enemy has a psychic deck and they're attacking with psychic, then you'll be able to, counter with just a small psychic attack. But it's usually not going to be that much damage. I think recently they did actually buff this guy's psychic attack. It used to be quite a bit weaker though. But obviously you're not going to be going psychic against a ranged deck or on your turn against a psychic deck. So you don't really make use of that psychic attack very much, which makes it a little more situational. So I haven't really used this guy in the past, but again, they did actually buff his stats quite a bit, so he's a lot stronger now. Alright, moving on, we've got Inquisitor Karmazov. This guy is actually really good, and he also used to have a different trait. It was Inspiring Presence before, and his Psychic debuff, it's not a very good ready ability, so he doesn't work well with Commissar Yarrick, but with Magos Dominus, he works very well. Again, with the increasing health, he can survive for incredible amounts of time. And the thing about Fear at the higher tiers is, again, the higher the health pool the card has, the greater the effect will be. And at this level, with Fear at level 3, it reduces the incoming attacks by 50%, which is effectively doubling the health of this card. So, it's at 243. It basically has almost 500 health in most situations, which is insane. It's so much health. So that's why Fear is so good on these, more expensive cards, especially if you can combo it with like a Warlord. The Nightbringer is the big one for the Necrons. This one I don't have at a very high level. It is pretty strong, but I haven't really used it, but that's just personally me because I prefer the ranged units for Necrons. But I have seen other players use this guy. The Helldrake is a pretty fun one, but this thing is just really expensive and it doesn't have very much health for its cost. So, compare this guy to Inquisitor Karmazov. 62 points and it only has 200 health, compared to this guy who, well, at the same level, has 228 health for only 43 points. So, yeah, the Helldrake is just not really all that durable. It does deal a lot of damage, but unless you can protect it, it's not going to actually survive for as long as you might expect. And then finally, at least for the final card in my collection, is the Keeper of Secrets. And this card is, at level 5 is where it really starts to shine, because it gains a solid attack with all 3 attack types. This makes it very deadly against any type of deck. And the high health pool, at level 6, look at that, 330 health. Again, if you have the trait at this level, it's effectively doubling it to 660 health. And it's even more, like over 700 health basically at the max level. So at the max level, this is probably the strongest card in the game. There have been a few explorations where we've had access to max level cards, so yeah, in those, I would definitely recommend using the Keeper of Secrets at max level. The thing is just a beast, almost indestructible. But yeah, at level 4, which is where I have it, it's not as strong because it doesn't have a very good ranged attack, and there are a lot of ranged decks out there. So that's it for all the cards. I may be missing a few. I can't really think of what they might be, but those are all of the Fear cards in my collection. Again, it's a very strong trait, particularly at the higher levels, and especially with cards with a lot of health, or when combined with Warlords that can increase the health of your cards. But at least for me, I don't really like using a lot of these bodyguards simply because they don't have the right kind of stats. They either have kind of a weak attack, not enough health, or just not the right attack type that I want to use with my Warlord. But let me know what you think about Fear, if you agree that it is one of the stronger traits in the game, and let me know which of these bodyguards you like to use the most. I'd be curious to hear about that in the comments. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.